And welcome back to Hannity. Earlier today, the U.S. Supreme Court heard oral arguments about whether or not President Obama, in fact, overstepped his presidential authority with three specific recess appointments. A decision is expected to come down sometime in June. Here with reaction to that and much more, Utah Senator Mike Lee. You know, Senator, I always thought, maybe I'm just kind of like a little old-fashioned, that if you're going to make a recess appointment, the Senate has to be in recess to make the appointment. What's your reaction?
It's a sad fact if you're the President of the United States, but it's absolutely true. In order to make a recess appointment, the Senate has to be in recess. And unfortunately for the President, on January 4th, 2012, the Senate was not in recess, according to its own rules and according to its own journal, which it's required and authorized to keep and maintain under Article 1, Section 5 of the Constitution. We were not in recess, so he had no power to do that. And based on the court's reaction to the arguments today, I'm convinced that the Supreme Court is going to reach that very conclusion.
Yeah, I know it's hard to read into what the justices may be saying or the questions that they're asking in these particular hearings. It seemed like it was pretty obvious, though, to me where they're going. Did you get the same impression?
Absolutely. I mean, look, you can't always tell in every case. But in some cases, you can tell where the center of gravity is on the court. And today, the center of gravity was rather clearly against the President. Yeah. And that's for the simple reason that the text of the Constitution is plainly against the President. Look, people complain about recess appointments all the time. Lots of presidents of both parties have made recess appointments. But these recess appointments were different than every other recess appointment in history. For one reason, the Senate didn't consider itself in recess. It's the first time any president has been so brazen.
You know, I look at, for example, look at the health care law. The president decides that he's going to have, unilaterally, he decides he's going to delay things. They say they have the authority to do that. Enforcing or not enforcing, for example, immigration law. They say they have the authority to do that. Do you believe there is a systematic abuse of power and a level of lawlessness here? And if so, what do you do?
Yes, there certainly is a level of lawlessness. There is a significant rate here of this president trying to convert our government into a government of one. And it was designed, it was set up specifically to prevent that sort of thing from happening. I mean, look, this is why we are our own country. This is why we don't salute the Union Jack. We wanted to prevent the kind of accumulation of power in the hands of the few or in the hands of one person that had caused us so much suffering prior to the revolution. Yeah. And so for this president to do this was inexcusable, and it was unconstitutional.
What are the examples you have, because we have co-equal branches of government, separation of powers, what are the examples that you see where you think that real lawlessness that ought to concern Americans exist now with this White House, this executive branch?
Okay, so this president wanted Congress to pass the DREAM Act. Congress wasn't able to get the votes to pass the DREAM Act, so the president tried to implement the DREAM Act on his own without legislation. The president saw that his health care law, Obamacare, was in real trouble, and so he decided to suspend the enforcement of the employer mandate while leaving hardworking Americans responsible for complying with the individual mandate. There are other aspects of Obamacare that the president simply said, I'm not going to implement, I'm not going to enforce, at least for the first year. He does all this as though he were a lawmaking authority consisting of one person, and he's not. Look, that might work in places with dictators, places with despots. If you're Raul Castro or Kim Jong-un, you might be able to get away with that. But we here have a constitutional republic, and the power of the President of the United States is limited by the Constitution. He's got to follow that.
All right, Senator, good to see you. Appreciate it, and we'll watch it, monitor very closely that decision and much more. But that is